Here's 6 things that you need to consider before you buy a house in Calgary, so you don't spend the next 6 months or the winter months regretting it. Now, everything can look good in the summertime when everything's lush and green, but in Calgary, sometimes the winters, it can get pretty real. And even when it's not super cold, now you got runoff, you got Chinooks, causing a lot of different challenges for a property to have to contend with through the freeze thaw cycles. Now, we know Calgary's real estate market can be very seasonal, busiest in the spring and into the summer typically, but no matter what time of year that you buy a house, you really have to consider these challenges that come with a property during the winter months. So let's get into it. Here's what I want to cover today. We're going to look at the 6 specific red flags that show up during the winter months only. These are things like a cul-de-sac trap, snow route parking bans, and why the direction that your driveway faces can sometimes matter just as much as the direction of your garden. Hey, I'm Ryan LeBlanc. I'm a realtor here in the Calgary area and help families plan for their next move or investment in real estate with a focus on the practical strategies and always on smart financial decisions. Most people will often consider the amount of sun that the backyard gets or the orientation of the house's windows so the natural light can flood inside. Now, these are all really good points. You want to have those on your list too if those are ones that really matter to you. But during the winter, the orientation of the home can also really matter, specifically for wintertime, along with maybe the exposure of your driveway or the sidewalk. Now, these things can matter as well. We got a lot of sunshine in Calgary. We're known as one of the sunniest cities in Canada. Calgary actually ranks the sunniest big city in Canada, averaging over 333 days of sunshine a year. It's pretty incredible how much the sun actually drops to the south during the winter months. Now, this effectively creates big shadows off all the buildings, and some areas just don't see sun throughout most of the winter. In the summer, we don't notice this because the sun is much higher in the sky and it feels a little bit more consistent throughout the day. What happens when you have a south-facing driveway, especially with Calgary's Chinooks, is that it doesn't just melt the snow a little bit quicker, but it also gives the concrete a chance to heat up. And that concrete then retains the heat a little bit longer than, your dirt and your grass, which then helps to melt away the next dusting of snow, or at least reduce it. And it just kind of speeds things up, and it heats up everything around it a little bit better. So a little bit less shoveling, less ice buildup. Now, here's a really neat map that I often use if someone is really concerned about the sunlight and shadows on their property.
So this is a map of the city of Calgary. You can go in here. It's a 3D map. You can move it around, find different angles. But it's really neat how we can dive right into different times of day and different dates, so that we can really see the difference between, summer, winter, times of day, what is going to cast the shadows on your property. If this is something that's really important to you, is specific sunlight and how the exposure of your property is, this is a really helpful tool.
A home that sits in a quiet cul-de-sac is often worth a premium, and rightfully so. There's no through traffic driving by. Your kids can play out in the street. There's often a great neighborly vibe as well that comes with cul-de-sacs that gets cultivated, and that can be really hard to beat. But there's always parking problems. This is something that, a lot of people don't really talk about, or if they do recognize it, they kind of dismiss it a little bit. But when the snow falls, it can really get a lot more challenging for cars. Some of the smaller cars, you just get stuck a little bit more in a cul-de-sac when, you get a real big snow dump. Then after it gets packed down, now you've got a sheet of ice that can be, a little bit treacherous to drive on or walk across the street on. Just some challenges that come with a cul-de-sac. You're never going to see a snow plow in most cases. So what a lot of folks end up doing is, because the cul-de-sac, if you've got a front driveway on your cul-de-sac as well, you end up having to pile all of your snow up on like the little sliver of land between each driveway. That can be challenging, trying to, accumulate a large volume of snow, towering it up. Or if you can't do that, now you're bringing it out into the street. Now you're creating these piles into the street between each driveway. I've seen that a lot. And now any chance for parking out there, that gets reduced. It just becomes a little bit of a nuisance that you have to deal with. Now, the third thing is that snow route parking bans. This is something we have in Calgary. A lot of other bigger cities will have this as well. So if you're moving from a smaller town, or you're coming from a condo where maybe you haven't had to pay attention to this much in the past, Calgary has specific roads where they've got designated as snow routes. When we get a big dump of snow, the city of Calgary will declare a snow route parking ban. What this means is now you've got 72 hours to have no parking on this street. You got to get your car and move it somewhere else. You're not allowed to park there anymore until the ban is lifted. So you have to keep your car away for up to 72 hours or until the ban is lifted. Now, if you do happen to put your car back there and they're not done yet, you can get ticketed or towed. You don't want to have that. Typically, one rule of thumb is that if a bus goes by, chances are it's going to be a snowplow route because they do prioritize the bus routes. We can take a look at a map here. I see this happen with basement suites a lot. Another example is if you've got older kids and they have their own cars, and now your household has 2, 3, 4 cars in the household. Well, chances are most homes aren't going to have the capacity to park off street. If you're on a snow route parking ban, it's something you really got to be aware of. Now, just like a quiet cul-de-sac, a corner lot fetches a premium. It's a little bit more desired. Oftentimes, you've got a little bit bigger property and fewer neighbors to contend with. So that being said, though, in Calgary, the bylaws actually state that a property owner is responsible for clearing snow and ice from the sidewalks that are adjacent to their property. On a normal lot, you might be looking at 40 feet out front. On a corner lot, if you've got a sidewalk on it, you could be easily looking at up to 150 feet or more. And if that sidewalk is on the north side of the exposure, going back to my first point, well, maybe it's shadowed, maybe it ices up. It can be a little bit of an extra nuisance. Add that to the time that it takes to clear off a driveway if there's a double car driveway. You could be in for a good workout. And if you travel throughout the winter, a corner lot means you absolutely are going to have to hire somebody or have a really good friend come by and shovel that away for you because you can't just leave it. The city will come and probably give you a fine. If somebody does complain, the city's going to come, they're going to send a crew and they'll take care of it for you, and they're going to send you a bill that you're not going to be happy with. Let's talk about community access, because Calgary has a lot of communities that are built up either down into valleys or up on a hilltop overlooking, say, Fish Creek Park in the south. But most of the hilly neighborhoods in Calgary, you're going to find those up in the northwest and the west part of the city. Now, think of areas like Edgemont and Tuscany, Royal Oak. There's a whole bunch out on the west end, far more than what is out in the south end. But in the south, think of other places like Cranston's Riverstone or Douglasdale Estates. Now, if driving up and down a hill in the winter makes you nervous, maybe that's not something that you want to have to contend with. And if that's going to add a lot more stress to you, if you're that type of a driver that doesn't want to be out on roads like that, maybe that's just, avoiding some hilly areas. You don't want to have to deal with that every day, right? And talking about the topography of the land, if you have a drainage swale on your property, now that's your responsibility to keep it clear and unobstructed so that it can flow. Now, think about this. Come springtime, when everything is melting and it's, if you're at the bottom of a street that has a swale on it, that can be a real headache. Everything, all the runoff from the houses upstream from you, up the street, that's all going to be coming down towards your property. Now, every time that happens during, Calgary Chinooks, when the thaw starts happening, all the runoff comes down. If you've got ice build up in there, sometimes that can back up into your property, maybe, filling up, a few feet into your backyard. You've got a little frozen lake going on. Or even if you're on a corner lot at the end of a hill and you have a swale, I see this all the time in a lot of communities, particularly in the suburbs, where these drainage swales are very, very common. If you're at the bottom of a hill with a sidewalk and you got the swale, all that runoff is now spilling out into the sidewalk. And with the freeze and thaw cycle, especially if you're on the north end, if it's a north exposure, it's going to be shadowed a lot of the time. Now you're contending with trying to keep that sidewalk clear of all that snow and ice build up that that can be quite challenging. So little things like this, people would never really consider this or think of it as a problem until they live there, and now they're pulling their hair out because every day they're out there chipping ice and it just keeps coming. Now, this is something I'm always paying attention to. Every home I look at, I'm always checking out the windowsills and the trim. Condensation often builds up on windows during the winter. This is caused by either too much humidity in the home or the home doesn't have enough ventilation. Honestly, this is something that many homes contend with. It's not a problem overall, but a lot of homes do struggle with this. So it's not really a red flag. It is an indication of the home's maintenance. And if this freeze and thaw and the humidity and the moisture dripping down and the damage that results from it, if that goes unchecked, you've got wooden windowsills, they can be damaged. The trim, the drywall, the paint, that can all get damaged as well. Worst case scenario, if it's really left unchecked, it can get in behind. Maybe now you've got mold issues that you're contending with in behind everything. If it's just a cosmetic damage, totally fixable. And there's even some really easy things that you can do to mitigate this issue if you did still buy the house. Don't let this one thing be the thing that turns you off of it, because like I said, it happens. It's very common for a lot of homes, but it's just an indication of, how long has it been going on without anybody, paying any attention to it, right? Just know that it's something that you'll likely need to contend with during the winter months going forward, and there's things that you can do to mitigate it. Buying a home during the winter months allows you to see the home at its worst, so to speak. It's really under a lot of stress at some points, but as long as you know what to look for, you can make that smart purchase at any time of the year. If you think there's a red flag that I missed in this video, in this short list, let me know in the comments below. There's a lot of things that I kind of skipped over, but these are the very common things that I see the most out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.